I'm Helen LEVI. We're in my studio in Red Hook, Brooklyn, where I make ceramics with my business partner, Billy. Hey. Okay, when the handles are dry, you can see I can touch it without getting my fingerprints all over it and smushing it, but it's still soft enough that I can move it around. That's a good time. And I would put plastic over the ones you're not working with because it's such a small piece of clay, it's going to dry pretty fast. I take this tool, which has a blade on one side. So yeah, I'm just going to gradually cut away at it. And like this part, you can see it's a little bit thicker than this part. This is probably the top of the handle, closer to where I was holding the piece of clay. And for this shape, I really want it to be kind of uniform all the way around, so I'm going to cut that off. And here I'm cutting it at an angle because it's going to want to sit flat here. This side I'm cutting a flat straight line. But that's what's nice about this little blade. You can just cut it however makes sense for that piece. So once I have the kind of general shape of it laid out, I'll hold it up against my mug. They're a little bit dry, which is why I'm keeping them so covered right now. And you can see it's still way too big, so now I know just to kind of keep trimming it back. I always prefer to have extra. So every mug is different. Some mugs, like for example this one, you know, this is meant to fit like your whole hand in there, or at least 3 fingers. This mug I'm making right now, I mean, it's probably going to be more of a 1-finger mug, but for some people that might not be as comfortable, but some mugs are more about the way they look versus how they feel on the hand. It's always a balance, and you know, when I'm designing a mug, I'm not strictly thinking about what's going to be the most comfortable on your hand. I'm thinking about what's going to feel good, but also what's going to look pleasing, or what's an idea I have that I want to try. So it's different for each one. I wanted to show this mug because I think it's a little bit more unusual than this type of, this was actually what I was going to do at first, but I just felt like it was a little bit plain, and I just wanted to show some of the other ways that I think about handles. So I was trying to think about what type of shape would complement this rounded mug, and I liked the idea of the handle kind of being round as well, but then also kind of like gripping the side of the body of the mug. So I think this is pretty good. I'm just going to make it the tail of it a little bit shorter. I think that looks pretty good. And for this, I kind of wanted the circle, like the circular part of the mug, to be kind of centered over the lip of the mug. So basically, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to score the parts that need to be attached. So if you just stick 2 pieces of clay together and you let it dry, it'll pop right apart. Because as the clay dries, it shrinks. That's just one of its properties. And so to make sure they stick together, you're going to score it. I like to use a blade, but you can use a variety of tools. So I make some score lines, both directions, and then I see where it's going to attach here, and I need to reach in there and score as well. And then I also need to score this whole side and this whole side. So you really don't want to be too dainty with this. You want to make sure you make nice deep scratch marks, because that's what's going to lock the 2 pieces of clay together and really get them to stick. Make sure I went down far enough here. That looks pretty good. And then you're going to put some slip on there. Slip is just water mixed with dry clay pieces. So like when these pieces dry out, I'll just add them to my slip. And it creates kind of like a glue. And I like that, you know, clay naturally separates from water. The heavy stuff sits on the bottom and the water's on the top. So sometimes I might just want more water and less actual like chunks of slip. So I just kind of like to keep it like this. I use a paintbrush. So I'll take a little bit of water. I don't want to make a big soppy mess. So just like, especially right here on this like inside part, I'm just going to put like a drop with the paintbrush. And then I'm going to press it on. And so I'm trying to attach it without deforming the shape, but you do really need to go over the whole seam with your finger to really make it stick. So then I take the other side of this tool, which is just like a rounded piece of metal, and any place that I can't reach with my finger, I just really gently just kind of press it in with that piece of metal. The clay is going to dry at different rates. A small piece like this will dry so much faster than a bigger piece like this. So if this dries really fast, it's more at a risk to pop off. If it all dries nice and slow together, they're going to stay together more. So once I'm done with these, I'll just loosely wrap them in plastic and just leave them like that for a couple days. If it was a tumbler or a bowl, I wouldn't really have to baby it like that, but for a mug you do. And then I'll take my paintbrush, and I don't want it super wet here, but I just kind of go over that with the brush. And I don't have to make it perfect right now, because once the mug is totally dry, before I fire it, I can kind of give it a sponge down and just make sure it's really nice. But I'd like to make it pretty good right now. Okay, so then take my brush and put some water here. Again, not too much. And then I'm going to press the handle on. Now, because for the design of this mug, I kind of like the seam here, and I don't want to lose that by like really pressing the clay in. I'm just going to kind of compress it from the top. And this is why if the handle was too soft and too wet, as I pressed it, it would just squish it out. So you need to wait for it to be firm enough that it can take this type of pressure without losing its shape entirely. And like in here, where it's hard for me to reach it with my finger, I'll just take this and really make sure that seam is connected. So then I'll take my brush again, almost dry brush, and I'll really go back in along this seam to make sure there was slip in there, and also to smooth out like any extra scratches that I made. This part is the longest step for me, always longer than throwing or longer than trimming or usually longer than glazing, because I feel like it's the most important step. It's where the mug becomes a mug, and like a plain shape like this round bowl on its own is not that interesting, and a handle on its own might not be that interesting, but then when you put them together and you feel like you get the proportion right, that's when it turns into something else. So I really, like, this is the step that I feel where you really make your mark on it, and you're really making the design, you know, become a reality. Also, if you rush the handle, you're probably going to get a little crack somewhere, and then your piece is going to be a second. So then once it's attached, depending on how wet or dry it is, or depending on the shape, you might want to let it dry upside down, hanging, you know, to keep gravity helping you, or you can leave it upright. I think I'll leave it upside down just for a couple minutes.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest videos.